that big bone terminology that we hear a lot too.
Big
So when you
bone.
go, when you go to the doctor, I wish I had a big bone. Welcome to the Casually Fit Life podcast. I'm Anthony Mobile.
I'm Ty Fischer.
And we're going to be hanging out with you today, going over 3 cool topics related to all things health and fitness. It's about being fit, but not too fit.
But not too fit.
Now, our 3 topics for today. You ready, Ty?
Here, let's go.
Topic number 1. Exercise myth. Exercise has to take hours to be effective.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes, we will be either confirming or debunking that myth. All right, now topic number 2. Can I be fat and healthy?
You specifically, we'll see.
Me, anybody? Yeah, we'll see. So we'll go over some stuff about body positivity, a little bit about biometrics, and we'll get to the bottom of it. Now, our third topic here, we're going to be a little bit away from fitness, and this is a little bit more about wellness. So I want to talk about some financial independence or freedom from the lens of real estate.
Boom, I like it.
Financial health is also very important.
Yeah, I dig it. Let's jump in then.
All right, exercise myth. Effective exercise can take hours. Truth or myth?
I think if you don't spend every waking moment in the gym, that you will not be fit or healthy.
Debunked. Debunked.
No. Of course, effective exercise does not need to take hours. It doesn't need to take up, absurd amounts of your free time. In fact, I think the opposite. I think for most regular folks, like you and I, if you're not an elite athlete, then if you're spending hours in the gym, you're probably going to end up doing more harm than good. It's probably going to be less effective than it otherwise would be.
Yeah, so I know that we use the word optimal a lot because Louis Simmons uses it, and I really think he's onto something. But an optimal amount of time in the gym means you're not working out too much or too little. There is a right amount for everyone to meet your specific goals, and it's really easy to go over, and it's, the easiest way to go under is just to not exercise. So the limits of how much you need to spend are dictated by how your goals are set up. So we have heard of the Pareto principle, yes?
Yes, 80-20.
80-20, yes. So 20% of the work gives you 80% of the results. And I think that's certified casually fit life.
Yeah, that's it's right there, casually.
That's right, 20%. So let's go into some hours here. So I wish I knew the math on how many hours are in a week. And I would say that you can be incredibly fit and healthy at 4 hours a week.
I agree.
Which is a very small percentage of the amount of time that you're alive in a week. A slightly bigger percentage of the amount of time that you're awake.
Yeah. But that translates to like 45 minutes a day, basically, for like 5 days.
Yeah. So the way you break it down matters too. So you can do micro exercises or micro workouts where every hour you get up and you do a set of 25 curls with some dumbbells. And then the next hour you do 25 squats with dumbbells. And then the next hour you do 25 bent over rows with dumbbells. And I think that would have some potential too.
Yeah, I think that would be a very time effective way to go about it, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd be able to make some maximal changes, but the goal of exercise is to increase your heart rate, challenge your muscles and your skeletal system, and make your neurological system more efficient.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that would be like an optimal way to exercise, but you could fit it in. If you're a busy person, you could fit it in, and it would definitely have benefits as opposed to not exercising.
Yep. And I've worked with a lot of different, and I'm sure you have too, a lot of different types of clients. So when I think of someone who is like very overweight and they want to just get started, for them, an hour workout's too much, or a 45-minute workout is too much. So I like the idea of these short bursts of physical activity, or even getting up and walking, down the steps, do some air squats, stretch your calves out, walk upstairs and sit back down at your desk kind of thing.
Right. I like to think, I'm thinking about this in my head right now, is in terms of like high, low, like intensity sort of days, high intensity days, low intensity sort of days. And generally speaking, you're not going to try and do both of those things in one workout. It's just not going to be the most optimal way to exercise. So you're going to prioritize your workout. And if you're doing a high intensity day, I mean, by definition, you really can't do that for hours, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the nature of it is going to be relatively short. But then on the flip side, if you're doing a long or a low intensity day, there's probably not a whole lot of extra fluff you need to do either. Like maybe it's a jog or something like that.
Hmm.
And so if you're going for a jog, 20 minutes is all you really need, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that also doesn't need to be very long. It doesn't require as much warm up.
Hmm. When I think of that 45-minute effort, I don't think of 45 minutes of dedicated exercise. I think of
No.
15 to 25 or 15 to 35 minutes of dedicated exercise. With the other is, assuming you're dressed right away, you got to grab your equipment, you got to warm up, you got to
Mhm.
prime the movements, you have to do some rehab kind of things, so that when you do hit this exercise, you're getting the best result out of it.
Yes, I agree 100%. So like if you're doing that, if you're doing a classic like CrossFit workout that's maybe in the 8-minute range, let's say,
Hmm.
um, you could spend the 45 minutes in there, like you said, addressing all that warm up and prep stuff, and then hitting a solid 8 minutes right near the back half of that.
Hmm.
And then you have a couple minutes to cool down, and it's all in that 45-minute frame.
Hmm. So I had a friend ask me, like, why should I warm up when I don't need to for a workout? And it took me like a lot of time to think about the answer that I like the best. And what I came up with was that you can't reach your maximum potential in that workout unless your body is primed for that already.
Right. Dude,
So
it's so funny you say this because I was thinking about this the other day. It's a coincidence.
what made you think about it?
Well, I was in the gym and I saw someone basically do this, and this is, but for the record, something I used to do fairly often as well. Not every day, but like at least multiple times a week.
Hmm.
I would walk in on a class and be late or something like that, and just jump right in, like set up my bar, and then it's the workout, like minimal warm up, like 2 air squats was the warm up. So it's like that used to be something I did, and then I saw somebody do this the other day, and I wouldn't think about doing it anymore. But it made me think, like, why did I stop doing that for one? And that's because of like injury potential. I just wanted to make sure my body wouldn't get hurt
Hmm.
as I got older. And then also, even if I didn't get hurt, I really don't feel like I got anything out of that workout. That
Yeah.
you're doing an 8-minute workout again, let's say, even a 15-minute workout. But if that's literally all you're doing,
Hmm.
your body's not getting very much out of that, because you're the first half of that workout, if not all of it,
Yeah.
just your body trying to figure out what's going on first, like
Right.
ramp up, and then you're done, and then that's it.
Yeah. So I 100% agree with you. And then there's the whole injury risk factor too. You think that it matters less when you're younger, but the price is paid whether you're younger or older. The question is just when.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
And Kelly Starrett says this all the time, like, it's fine to deadlift with the rounded back until it's not.
Until it's not. Yep.
So one moment, one day, one lift will bite you in the ass, and then it'll be awful because it ruins your potential for an X amount of time, and you're not able to effectively train.
Right. No, I'm with you. I think that warm up piece is crucial. But like we said, it could also be in 45 minutes, right? If you got a high intensity workout, you
Mm-hmm.
can spend longer warming up and prepping. You could spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes even, and then hit that workout and still have a couple minutes at the end. If it's low intensity, you don't need to warm up as much, and you
Yeah.
could still do a 30-minute row,
Yep.
and you didn't need to warm up that much for it. So you can still fit it in. So
Yeah. Now I've been listening to a lot of OPEC stuff because I think James is a really smart dude.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of the minimum that you have to do, and I tell this to all the clients that I work with who are just starting out, 3 days is enough to progress your fitness for sure.
I think so.
It's enough as a jumping off point. It's like your consistency in a week, a 7-day week, you can fit it in really easily. You just do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. And then you have a day of work, a day of rest. You never go too long without working out.
Right.
So what made me think about it through OPEX's lens is they have the 3 ways of describing a workout. You have a pain, a gain, a sustain workout.
Yeah.
So if you're doing 3 days a week, I feel like that's a pretty nice distribution. So to go through pain, gain, and sustain, sustain is your long, slow distance, low intensity, elongated workout. You're breathing hard. We're working on your cardiovascular system. Then you have your gain, which is just strength training and bodybuilding, which that's one of the things I think bodybuilding is one of the things that CrossFit vilified pretty early. Like, oh, let's just do thrusters and back squats and deadlifts because it's functional. But I think there's a lot of value in a bent over row or a single arm strict overhead press or yeah, a lot of the stability pieces come from unilateral movements.
Yeah.
And the pendulum has swung back too, I think. And then the pain piece is the one that is needed least often, I think, for people who want to do fitness. But pain is usually a multimodal effort, but it can be a single effort. And it's, let's say, 20 wall balls, 15 burpees, 10 push-ups, and 5 feet handstand walks, and then rest 5 minutes. Hit it as hard as you can, then rest. So these are the ones that pain is the perfect descriptor for because they really hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do like their framework for thinking about those things for sure. And so I think we kind of laid out like why you can get it done in a short period of time. Maybe, so here's what I was getting at with in the beginning, where I'm saying if you're going longer, you're probably actually doing more harm than good. And that goes back to what you just said there, like with 3 days a week, right? It gives your body, you're not doing too much in a row to where you're interfering with the gains from the previous day. Like if you work out every day, you know, maybe you did do some strength training the day before, but now you're doing strength training again, or even just anything else that taxes your body. And now your body's not recovering. I think we talked about on the last episode that hypercompensation, right?
Yeah.
You need to allow for that. That only happens during recovery. And if you're doing too much, there is no recovery. And that goes with across the week, like if you're training every day really hard, but also even within a training session, if you're in there for 3 hours, you know? So you might be doing more harm than good.
So I think 3 days is enough, but I think 4 days is optimal.
I think 4 days is optimal unless you have some sort of like, I don't know. I mean, there's most, if you're like a competitor, like an athlete in a sport, or I mean, maybe even Tough Mudders are your thing, right? But like you're a competitive Tough Mudder, maybe you need to more than 4 maybe. But if you have no goals in that sort of area, I think 4 is plenty. It's probably optimal, like you said.
Yeah, no, I think people miss out on this idea a lot because when you do more than 3 days, imagine you're doing high intensity training 3 days a week, you can actually hit high intensity.
Yes, good point.
So when you try to do high intensity training 7 days a week, you're really doing medium intensity 7 days a week and high intensity none.
Yep. RPE is through the roof.
That's right.
But relative, or I should say, but absolute intensity is like 70%.
if that, right?
Yeah, by day 6, yeah.
Yeah, and RPE is a good thing to look at too, and that's why it's not the end all be all of a training program.
Right.
So the reason I brought this topic up is because I hear this a lot that I'm too busy to exercise, and that's where dispelling this myth is so important to me.
Yeah. I think it becomes easier. I mean, what do you think? But I think what happens is people have too many goals in their mind, even if they're not like articulate in their mind. they're just trying to accomplish too much. If you have one goal, like one specific thing that you're focused on, then 45 minutes all of a sudden turns into a lot of time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But if you're like, oh, I got to go in and I got to do this strength program, and then I got to hit this accessory work, and then I got to do all this long cardio stuff, and then I got to do all this mobility on top of that, and I got to do all of that every time I'm in there. Yeah, it starts 45 minutes doesn't seem like a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
But if you can pare it down, you can make it work.
And sports have been doing this for a while too, that, you know, when you practice, usually in a higher level of sport, you're exerting less and you're thinking more. So the sporting activity is not really exercise or activity, it's mental repetition or skill development.
Yeah.
So I think for something like skill development, you might need a little bit more time than 45-minute sessions because you're reinforcing patterns. You don't need hypercompensation because you're not making any biological changes. So last week we talked about the biological and neurological components. So biological, you're kind of limited. You're handcuffed by how well your body can recover.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
not neurologically. Practicing skills, you can do them for a much, much higher volume before you run into trouble.
Yes, yeah. But you still do run into trouble. There's like an overload thing. I'm not really sure what it's called, but I've noticed it myself when you're trying to learn a skill. Like there's this, I don't know, this arc, I guess, of your improvement. And obviously in the beginning, you suck at it. You start to practice, you get better. But as the session goes on, you start to deteriorate. And who knows exactly what that's from. But if you step away, sometimes even just for like 20 minutes and come back, all of a sudden things start to click. Depending on how like demanding that skill is, 20 minutes might be enough. But yeah, so there is some sort of limit to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess the moral at this point is like effective exercise takes hours because it's like 2.5 hours a week of exercise is way more than what, or is more than enough to meet the requirements of someone in their daily lives, keep them looking and feeling fit and keeping their body healthy.
Yeah, totally agree.
One of these days we should talk about, maybe next week, we'll talk about maybe if you could create a standardized warm up and cool down routine, you could shorten that time even more because your routine for warming up is identical session to session to session.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that idea, and I feel like it works 80% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
right.
there's other times where I personally feel like you go through phases of specific things that you need to do for certain movements. So it's not 100%, but yeah, I think you can do it for 80% of your workouts, 4 out of the 5 days or 2 out of the 3 days. Hey, that's pretty good.
That's a pretty good deal, becoming optimal. So you definitely have enough time in your week to do it, and put it on your calendar if you're a calendar person. You know, write it down or do it first thing in the morning so that way nothing can get in the way of your exercise routine.
Boom. There you go. So that being said, topic number 2.
Yeah, this one's spicy. Can
Eh,
I be fat and can I be healthy at the same time?
So I think this is like a triggering one, right? Because if you really want to have this conversation, you need to define what it is to be fat
And to be healthy.
and what it is to be healthy. Exactly. So when I hear it, the way I interpret those words, to me, the answer is yes, you can. When the way I interpret those words. But again, it all depends on kind of how you define that, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, fat doesn't necessarily mean somebody who is like morbidly obese, right? I mean, maybe that's what it means to some people. That's not what it means to me. It just means you're a little overweight, right?
Yep.
And healthy to me doesn't mean that you are, again, some sort of extreme athlete. It just means that basically you can live a functional life and hit the the typical, what is it called? Like life expectancy, right? Like you're not going to die young, and it's going to be functional. You're not going to be like disabled or debilitated for any reason, preventable reason, I should say. And you're not on like any medications.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think,
Functional is a great word to use here.
yeah, and I think overweight people can absolutely live those lives.
Hmm.
So to me, the answer is yes. But again, it depends how you want to pick it apart.
So let's go through some notes here. So in traditional medicine, they measure your BMI when you walk in the door, and I hate that measurement a lot.
Yeah, I get it, but it's not. It falls apart for people who have above average muscle mass.
Yep. So for those of you who don't know, a BMI is a ratio of your height to your weight. It doesn't tell you what that weight is made out of. Is it made of fats? Is it made of muscle? Is it made of bone? You know, that big bone terminology that we hear a lot too.
Big
So when you
bone.
go, yeah, when you go to the doctor, I wish I had a big bone. When you go to the doctor, they measure it, and the numbers that I have here are 18 to 25 is like they're like good. You're cool. You're healthy. You fit in a box. It's very cookie cutter. You're good.
Right.
Then once you go from 25 to 30, it's overweight. 30 to 35 is overweight class 1. Obesity starts at the 30.0 mark.
Okay.
So we've already said a bunch of times that we don't agree with traditional medicine because it is just that. It's cookie cutter. It's not descriptive enough.
Right.
But now is where things start to get tricky. So I want to read a quote here. So from the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology, they published a study and their results said one cannot be fat but healthy. And this was the first nationwide study to analyze that being regularly active is not likely to eliminate the detrimental health effects of excess body fat.
Sorry,
So,
say that one more time.
yeah, one cannot be fat but healthy. This was the first nationwide analysis to show that being regularly active is not likely to eliminate detrimental health effects of excess body fat. Now, I wasn't able to find the full study for the methods to see where they put it, but I'm pretty sure they said the associations with BMI, activity levels, and risk factors, that's what they were comparing.
Okay.
So if you're active, regardless of your body mass index, your risks were lower, but not enough to say that you can just weigh whatever you want from their study.
Of course. I think that's like the problem, right? Is people want an absolute here. Like, can you be overweight 5 or 10 pounds? Probably. Can
Oh,
you
hell yeah,
weigh
you can.
whatever you want? Probably not. Like, come on, that's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, but then you think of someone, this is why BMI is like, it's a flawed measurement. Because you look at a guy like Eddie Hall or Thor, which I can't wait for that fight. But those guys are extremely overweight on the
Yeah,
BMI chart.
on the BMI chart. And honestly, though, this is maybe a part where it's actually holds up, though. Maybe like I think the jury might still be out on whether or not that's healthy.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait, 15, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But when they cut down and they look ripped, they're still overweight, but they have a low body fat percentage, which is a much more useful or effective measurement than BMI.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be more correlated with the health aspect of it.
Yeah, so then in the same study, what they did was they looked at the risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes, which I think are like the main two for preventable health problems.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So being active makes your heart stronger. That's great. Perfect. But there's a diminishing return when your weight is of a certain place where your body can't pump enough blood to make things work. And also with being overweight, you start to get deposits of things in your vessels, which make it harder to pump through.
Yeah.
So Then type 2 diabetes is just your sensitivity to sugar, and the more fat mass you have, the harder your pancreas. Is that where
Yeah,
your
insulin comes from the pancreas.
so
Yeah.
that's where your pancreas has to work harder. Now that one is more diet focused than activity focused, but exercise does increase your sensitivity to insulin, which is a good thing.
Yes.
So um, the study showed that there was a greater cardiovascular risk for overweight and obese participants compared to those of normal weight, regardless of how much activity they did. So we see that there's a risk there. I mean, then they had, high cholesterol was one of them, and high blood pressure. The high blood pressure was normal with weight, but worse when with inactivity. So that goes to show that exercise is more important for that heart piece. But I think one of the things that you have to think about is, you said it right at the beginning. What do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And are you happy with the way that you look? And are you able to do everything that you want? And do your blood panels come back relatively normal?
Right. Exactly. That's what I think. I think if like you said, you can do what you want to do, you're happy with who you are and where you're at, and you're not on any sort of preventable medications.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good indication that you're doing all right health-wise,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking.
Yeah. And I watched this video online, and it was a woman who was, she self-identified as overweight. Um, and she said, I was eating an ice cream cone and someone drove past me and yelled like, "Oh, you fatty, get off the ice cream." And it like broke her down in tears. And it broke her down in tears because she got that ice cream as a reward for losing some number of weight. Like she was down 20 pounds, and then this was her reward. And then she was going to go back to the grind and continue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of thing just breaks my heart. And that's why these conversations can be tough, and people are rightfully so offended when they're attacked for being overweight, but nobody knows where they are on their journey.
Right. You don't know, like you said, who knows how many pounds she lost before that.
Yeah.
That
And
sucks.
yeah, and that's what she was talking about in the video, and she was hurt. And I mean, that kind of thing is so hard. And that's the kind of behavior that makes people fearful of coming into the gym.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, maybe this is a good point then too, or a good moment to point out that we're asking if you can be fat and healthy, but you can also be not fat and not healthy at the same
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Like you can be a quote skinny person or lean or whatever and be unhealthy too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have visceral fat, and then you have abdominal or adipose tissue, right? I believe they're a little different.
Yeah, no, you're right. The visceral fat is like what's around your organs and stuff, and then the subcutaneous is like just under the skin.
Yeah, have you ever done an in-body scan?
Yes.
So do you remember the visceral fat number on the side?
I don't. It was like a couple years ago.
So the in-body is a really awesome tool. If you have a chance to get a scan done, definitely go do it. But it gives you a lot of information, and one of the biomarkers it gives you is a visceral fat number. Now, they have created this scale following an algorithm that they've tested over time, but the visceral scale falls from 0 to 20. And at 10 or fewer, you have a 50% risk reduction in type 2 diabetes and cardiac disease.
Wow.
Now, the body fat percentage does factor in here, but the visceral fat is different from the body fat mass because of the location.
Yeah.
So visceral fat is, you said it, fat inside of your gut around your organs, and it's much more dangerous pound for pound than what you think of when you think of someone who's overweight. They have belly fat, or they have fat on
Right.
their thighs or their arms.
Exactly. And a point to make here, you know, scientist Ty here chiming in. I read a story one time or an article one time.
Oh, are we talking about bro science here?
Yes, I read an article one time. I think they call that, I think they refer to subcutaneous fat also as brown fat, I believe.
Yes.
And when it comes to like exercise encourages fat, excess fat, to be stored more as brown fat as opposed to the visceral, I think, white fat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a part where exercise can kind of help shift the distribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the difference is one is more metabolically active, correct?
I think so. I think that would be the subcutaneous, right?
The one that goes away faster, right? You can change it.
I believe. I'm now I'm getting a little out of it. I don't remember this part. It would make sense to me that that would be the brown subcutaneous fat because that
Yeah.
could be used for exercise.
Yep.
And so exercising would cause it to be stored there, so then you could later access it when you're exercising again, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, so this person looks like they're fit from the outside. Their BMI actually would come back within the normal-ish range. But when you take their biomarkers, excess visceral fat acts as an endocrine gland, so it starts to secrete hormones that are not good for you.
Okay.
So well, things like endometriosis act the same way. So you have your adrenals, you have your thyroid, a lot of things like that that are responsible for the processes. So now you just have more of it that your body shouldn't have. But these people look healthy on a scale, they look healthy in a photograph, but these are the people who don't have good exercise habits and have poor diet habits, and they're still suffering from the same consequences, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Potentially worse, right?
Potentially worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being active is super important, but it's not quite enough. Now, I guess it comes down to, are you happy with how you look? Are you happy with, if I'm blindfolded and take your blood and run samples, do those numbers look good? And if they do, and you can do what you want to do, just keep going. You're in a good spot.
Yeah. I think that's fair. So, I mean, bringing it back, right? It depends on how you define the two terms.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we're being reasonable about those definitions, then the answer is yes, you can, right?
Yeah, I definitely think you can. And
Okay.
don't let anyone be a jerk and tell you otherwise. And then if someone measures something on you that is objective and not appearance based, you got to kind of listen to them and see, if you go to a doctor and, you're hurt by it, they mean the best. They want you to be better. They may go about it the wrong way, but their intentions are relatively pure.
Yeah. Like a doctor telling you, that you have type 2 diabetes or that you're at risk, significant risk for it, and it's because of your weight or because of your diet. That's not fat shaming. That's them trying to help you.
Yeah. And then in research, I deal with some people in sports medicine who have knee pain, and it's osteoarthritis. And through all the research, the most effective way to treat osteoarthritis is weight loss.
Right. That makes
But
sense.
that's not necessarily descriptive, right? If I cut your arm off, you'll be lighter and your knee pain will be better. But that is through all of the thousands of cases that they've tracked over time. That's where you put all the data into a smart algorithm that doesn't know anything about anyone, and that's the information that it gives you.
Right. Okay, so we're in agreement then?
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and get a pizza now.
Nice.
So, where does that land us? What's number 3?
Financial independence, or I guess I should have wrote financial health, so we're sticking in the same category.
Yes, financial health. I like it.
So I wanted to bring up real estate because we have both looked into this extensively, you more than I, considering you're a real estate agent.
It's true. I am a secret agent.
Oh, that too.
Oh, sorry. Whoops.
Oh man, delete.
Let's edit that part out.
So what got you interested in real estate?
What got me interested in real estate was, I believe I read Tony Robbins' book on money. I can't remember what it was called. It might have just been like finance. I don't know. Tony Robbins had a book. He has 2, I think. It was the first one that was on the money, the topic of money and finance, personal finance. And, that really opened my eyes to a lot of different possibilities. And that just led me to like another book, well-known book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it's just like, you know, it just kind of spirals from there. And anytime you go on a journey of personal financial independence, if you Google it and whatever, you're bound to come across real estate. So that's kind of what got me into it. I think it started with Tony Robbins' book, and then just like eventually I came across it. So
Yeah, to fact check, the title of that book is Money, Master the Game.
Money, Master the Game. There you have it.
The subtitle is Master the Game, but you were right on it. And I've also read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that is definitely a game-changing, super easy read.
Super easy read. Good book. Really good.
Yeah, that's why it's sold like, I don't know, 10 million copies.
Right. So the idea, okay, financial independence, right? Or financial health, we're going to call it. But what you come across is financial independence, financial freedom, whatever. I guess how would you define that? I think of it as like, basically you don't have to work if you didn't want to.
That would be financial freedom.
Freedom.
And that number is different for every single person.
Yeah, for sure. A good way to think. So there's two factors to figuring out what that number is, right? It's how much money. Well, I guess there's two factors that you can use to adjust that number. You can either make more money. So you make $60,000 now. Well, if you made $200,000 a year, that would probably make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Or you can decrease how much you're spending. And most of us have way more control over the latter than we do the former.
Yes. And it drives me insane. And the millennials are the victims of this, when everyone is just like, buy less lattes, have less avocado toast. That's how you pull yourself up from your bootstraps. But it is right that if you spend less, you'll be able to save more and retire sooner.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think those people, they think they get it when they're saying that. They think they understand it, but I think you're missing the mark, because really it's look about where you live. Like, what are you paying for either rent or a mortgage, right? Like, that's your easy way to knock some money off right there.
Yeah, a stimulus check in LA doesn't go very far compared to like outside of any city in Wisconsin.
Right. I mean, location is one thing that's harder for people to change, but you can. A lot of people can. It's harder for some, but for instance, you know, when people buy a house, I think it's pretty common for people to overreach what's realistic when they buy their house.
Yep.
People buying $600,000 houses should probably be in $300,000 houses, you know? But just because you can scrape together the down payment doesn't necessarily mean you should go into that house. You know, it's going to make the rest of your life that much more difficult.
And then you have to fill that house with stuff.
Yeah, then it's going to happen. You're not going to have empty rooms. That's just, you might think that, but that's not happening.
I would love some empty rooms.
Yeah.
Just because, one, I don't really like that much stuff, and two, it's nice to like, the room is so clean and you can do whatever you want with it.
But it's a law of nature, my man.
No.
It will fill up.
Yes, I'm very familiar.
Yeah.
So real estate, just because those are the books that you read, is that what pushed you down that road?
Yeah, I think it was like the natural progression from those books. Like, I don't know which book it was in, but one of the things I kept coming across was that real estate has made more millionaires, at least in America, than anywhere else, or than anything else. It's just more likely to be a winning strategy in the end.
Right.
And so, like, what does it look like if you're using real estate to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea is you get rental properties. That's the idea.
Yep.
Not that you become a real estate agent and sell real estate. That might work, but the idea is that you own properties that you rent out to tenants. You become a landlord. And it doesn't have to start with, you know, sometimes you think that, and people might think of an apartment building. That's like an extreme case. You don't need to own an apartment building. You can own, I mean, you can do it out of your own house. If you have a house that has like extra space in the basement, or you have some of those empty rooms that you're talking about, You
Yeah, I
start
wish.
there. You start there. That's the easy, like if you can, I think an ideal scenario would be if you had a basement with outdoor access, like an extra, like a door that opens to the outside,
Hmm.
then you can convert the basement into like a really basic livable space and rent it out to somebody. And then they pay you, 600, 800 bucks a month for that and covers most of your mortgage payment on that house.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that frustrated me earlier, that I wanted to be profitable immediately, but just starting with offsetting your costs a little bit at a time makes you richer.
Yeah, 100%. If I have 600 more bucks a month that I don't have to spend, that I can keep putting into the bank or the other investments, or even just enjoying my life a little bit better, I'm richer, right?
Yep.
Even if my income didn't really change much.
Yeah, now the whole reason that you would want to be independent is because you can buy back time, because that's the one thing that you can't get more of ever.
Nobody can.
Yep. Not yet. I'm betting on Elon Musk helping us out here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not putting anything past him.
Not yet.
Yeah.
You saw Altered Carbon?
No.
Oh, it's a pretty cool sci-fi show, but everyone in the base of their spine has this like disc, and they call it your stack. And
Okay.
when your body dies, they can just pull your stack out and put it in a new sleeve.
So I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but that would definitely work if you were a robot. But when they talk about all of this uploading your consciousness stuff, 100% you are dead if that is the route you take. If you say I'm
Ty,
gonna, you're
you
dead.
convinced me of this, and I'm glad because you saved my life.
Yeah, you cannot upload your consciousness. They can copy it and put it on a computer, but you are dead.
Yep. So unless they take your brain and that's what travels.
Right. If they figure out how to do a brain transplant, that's a different
Yes.
story. But if your brain goes, you're gone.
Goals of financial independence via real estate. All right. So the one way is the rental properties, right? That's how you gain wealth from finances. You buy a house. Ideally, it's a duplex, right? Because you get two houses for the price of one. When I think about this, I don't want to make money for 5 to 10 years at all. I just want to make my costs of acquiring homes zero.
Okay, yeah, that could work, right?
So when I think about it, it's not a today thing. It's a retirement thing, so that when I'm done, I have this book of things. It's just like an investment, buying stocks and bonds and making any sort of investment period. So that's why I think of it as an investment property,
Yes.
because you won't be able to buy one house, rent it out to a certain person and make enough on that mortgage for you to survive.
No, no, no. Like if you do that, you're probably making like I mean, I'm sure people will debate this, but you might be making a couple of $100 a month after
Yeah.
all expenses are paid, you know? Um, so yeah, you're not living off a couple $100 a month. So, but the idea is that you can, like you said, leverage that property and get another property. And over time, right? Over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And then at the end of that, if you keep repeating that on a yearly basis, you have 10 to 15 to 20 properties, all
Right.
making a couple $100 a month.
Yep. 20 properties making a few $100s means thousands.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
And then, like, you might sell one of them and take that money and turn it into a better investment that's making you more money than the previous one and that sort
Yep.
of thing. But yeah, it's definitely a slow drip, right? It's not a get rich quick overnight sort of thing.
No, but it does speed up the more you do it, and it can get exponentially faster
Sure,
depending on the number of properties that you have.
sure, for sure. Um, I think there's maybe two things I would want to throw in here just on the topic of financial independence. Um, well, with real estate specifically, people say, because you said it's just like stocks, right?
Mhm.
In a sense, right? So a lot of people prefer one or the other. And a lot of times what you hear with people who prefer real estate is that they own a real thing.
Hmm.
You know, when you own a stock, it might be making you as much money, you might be making the same amount of money, but you don't actually own a thing, you know? And some people like you just own like this conceptual like ownership of a company.
Yep.
Whereas real estate, there's a tangible thing that you can point to, you can go there, you can use it. Um, and you know, people just like that. Some people like that, some people don't care about it. Some people that's a hassle, right? But some people prefer to have that really tangible thing that they can point to.
Well, a stock never needed a plumber.
Exactly, right? So it can be a hassle from that perspective.
And then also 2008.
And so, yeah, 2008, that tanked
But
everything.
on the flip side, if you're someone in 2008 that has been saving really well, now 2008 is your prime time to double, triple, quintuple your worth.
Yes.
So having money saved up in different assets is nice because people always need a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where something like a Section 8 housing strategy would work, right?
Yep.
So you're not relying on the person, you're relying on the government and you're providing a service to the person.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a fair amount of people, I'm pretty sure, that take advantage of these kind of different or alternative real estate paths.
Yeah, no, I know somebody who actually uses that as their primary path, and he loves it, because, like you said, he doesn't have to worry about whether or not the tenant's going to pay on time
Mm-hmm.
because it's coming from the government, and they're always on time with that sort of thing. Oddly enough,
Yeah.
it seems to be the one thing that they're good at is those scheduled payments. um,
Making rent payments.
right. So so he actually loves it. It's less hassle for him, and you know, he can actually charge like a relatively fair market price because you might think if it's low income housing, then you got to charge low income, like, or low rent, right? You can only charge a little bit of rent, but not really because they are qualifying through Section 8. And so that covers like a fair market value rather than what they might otherwise be able to afford. So
Yeah.
um, the other thing I would want to say, just on this general topic of financial independence and just investing or whatnot, and this comes straight from Rich Dad Poor Dad, is the idea of what is an asset and a liability.
Mm-hmm.
Because we hear so often, it's like, I mean, maybe not so much anymore, but definitely I heard it when I was younger, and it might still be a common thing, is that people will say that your home is like your biggest investment ever, or the most important investment you'll have, or that they'll look at, like when they're counting up their assets, they'll count their car, you know? And in like tricky financial terms, those things are true, like on like in a balance sheet or something. But what he gets at in Rich Dad Poor Dad is when you're really calculating it for yourself, you should think about things that produce income. Those are assets, and things that don't or that cost you are liabilities. So you got a car that's worth 20,000 bucks. People will put that on their assets. Cool, my net worth went up by 20,000 bucks because I own a car worth 20,000 bucks. Yeah, but that car doesn't actually make you any money on it, and in fact, you're paying it off too, you
Yeah.
know? So it doesn't really add up. And same
Yeah.
with home, same
My
thing.
house isn't making me any money. It's costing me money every day.
Exactly. Now you go ahead and you put somebody in the basement, or you rent it out, or you're using your car to like Uber or whatever. Like
Hmm.
now all of a sudden these things become income producing. And
Yep.
that's how you should look at it. Again, it's not to say that if you go talk to a financial expert, you know, they're going to count it different ways, but he's just trying to get across like a practical way to think about it in your mind for the everyday person. If it produces money for you, that's an asset, and that's what you should be buying more of. Otherwise, it's a liability, and you should
Yeah.
minimize.
Yeah, that's a good point to make too, because your first house is more of a liability.
Right. Now, like you could say you're going to sell it, right? And maybe you bought it for cheap and you're going to sell it in 5
Appreciate.
years and you're
Yep.
going to make the difference. Sure, absolutely. But that's still a little bit of speculation you're not really sure of. And you don't know if you're really going to sell it or not. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just to keep it simple. If it makes money, it's an asset, buy more of it.
Yeah. So let's go through a couple different steps of making the first the first trajectory into the real estate market, right? So you got your real estate license. Do you think it will or has already paid off what it costs to do it in time and money?
No, no, I don't think it's completely unnecessary for most people. It's absolutely only necessary if you are trying to be a real estate agent as your career. Beyond that, you absolutely do not need it. Now, maybe I learned a couple things just going through that process,
Mm-hmm.
but you can learn those things, there's Google. You can learn anything. You don't
So
need
you
to.
would say it wouldn't save you enough money if you were buying a house a year to be worth it to process it on your own?
No, so it could save you money because when you go through a real estate agent, you pay a
Mm-hmm.
fee, and that fee could be, a couple $1,000s.
Right.
And so you could definitely save on that fee if you were the agent. Um, but again, you're putting in like the time and the effort for it, so you got to weigh that. And there are costs associated with keeping up the real estate license and having access to the systems. So it might actually just level out depending on how much you end up doing. If
Yeah.
you're doing one a year, I don't think it's worth it. If you're doing like, one a month, then it's probably worth it. Yeah.
Yeah.
From a financial aspect anyways.
So the purchasing of the home could be done by yourself if you get your real estate license. And that's where like you're trading time for money because you have to learn how to be a real estate agent.
Right.
So initially, that might not be a terrible idea because if this is something you want to do, you commit to it and you have some skin in the game and you learn the rules and the regulations and how to talk the talk. But
Yeah.
I do think you're right. You could learn it all for basically for free.
Yep.
Now that's my segue into my second point. That house is going to need maintenance and it's going to need repair and it's going to need um, modifications
Mm-hmm.
because you don't buy a house to sell it at the same price.
That's not the ideal scenario.
No. So watch YouTube. It's totally free and you can learn how to do literally anything online for free. Do that first and then look into it.
Yeah.
Getting a plumber is going to cost a few $100s, but buying a snake and a plunger and some Drano and trying it yourself for an hour might solve your problem, and then you know how to fix it from then on. And if it doesn't, you spent $50 on equipment, that it's a skill that will be useful because housing skills are forever.
Yeah. And speaking for myself, most of us don't have any of them these
Yeah,
days.
right.
So,
But it's not hard to learn how to snake a drain. It's
right.
not hard to learn how to find a leak. And if you do a little bit of the work in the beginning, then you call someone to do the actual work, but you have a general idea on the problem and it's going to save you a lot in time.
It's going to save you a lot of time. And with contractors from that angle, or even with real estate agents, like we were talking about getting your license a moment ago, if you go down either one of those paths or just educate yourself on it, you'll know whether or not you're being like swindled by somebody. You'll know if they're being unreasonable, so
Yep.
that too, that'll save you some money and headaches, I'm sure.
Now, do you have any, so that takes care of the upkeep of the property, but don't buy super cheap stuff because it never lasts. You don't need to buy super expensive stuff because you're overspending. So definitely like when you go out to dinner, you buy the second cheapest bottle of wine because you don't want to buy the cheapest.
Right. No, I like
You
that.
don't you don't want to be that guy.
I like that. Yeah.
But there are some really cool YouTube channels to follow that are way better at this than me. Meet Kevin is one of them. There's a bunch of really cool stuff on there.
Okay.
So now when you talk about how do you find a property if you were looking for one? What's your process?
I mean, I would start with Zillow, or those, there's like Redfin, Zillow, I think Realtor.com is one.
Mm-hmm.
So you
So what
could
are you
start
looking
there.
for?
What's that?
What are you looking for specifically?
Oh, what do I look for? Well, if I were using one of those tools, I would, you would want to have a general area in mind that you're looking. And it depends. Like if you're looking in a place that's near you, like if you live in a major city and you're familiar with the little different parts of the town, you might have an intuition of what parts are growing recently, what are becoming trendy or whatnot, and you can start to look there. Um, and then when you look in those areas, you would definitely want to make sure that things have been sold in those areas recently,
Hmm.
right? Because you want to comp everything. So if you look in an area and nothing has been sold there recently, you're not going to be able to really know what those properties are worth. If you look in that area in a neighborhood and you see that 5 houses were sold in the past like year, well, now you have a pretty good idea of what those houses are worth, and then you can kind of it'll guide you, right? You'll make sure you're not overpaying for something. But if you don't see that, that's definitely a red flag, in my opinion. It's definitely more speculative if you don't see that. And yeah, once you have those comps, you're just looking for something that's at or below those comps, and
Yep.
then you can kind of hedge your bets that it's going to go up.
Yeah. So then the next step that I have spent a lot of time on is looking at apartments for rent or houses for rent in that specific area. And I
Mm,
see how much it costs for a 1 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, a 1 bath, a 2 bath. And then I compare that with a, really short mortgage calculator.
mm-hmm.
And if those two numbers can come pretty darn close as is, like then I'm looking in the right area. That helps me.
I mean, that's definitely a good way to look at it. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to run numbers on everything. Like you're
Hmm.
going to have to run all the numbers on all the expenses and what you expect to make from it. Um, so yeah, at some point or another, you're going to look at those numbers and you're going to need to know them. So for sure. Another thing that helps, and this is from more of I read this about, it was a book that was about investing in real estate from like out of state, basically. Um, and one of the tips that he gave in that book was to look for areas, just go on Google and research areas that are growing in job opportunities and that are projected to grow in job opportunities and population growth. And when you look in, you find an area that's growing in both of those things, and generally they're going to grow together. So it's a pretty good bet. But if you can find like really positive metrics for those things, then that's probably a good place to go and invest in, because people are coming there, they want to live there, and they're willing to pay the fair price for stuff because they're hoping to get a job there and all that sort of jazz.
And the property value tends to increase in those places fairly consistently.
Yeah, it will. But what we're talking about here is still applicable also to like the stock market too, because you're looking for things that are growing or that you think that are going to grow, right?
Yep.
But if you're too late on that trend, you're going to buy things when they're already inflated,
Hmm.
and you're actually going to end up losing because those things are going to come down at some point, or they're just not going to go up the way you thought they would.
Yeah, well, COVID is a great thing to look at because what I've noticed is that more and more people are working from home. So
Yeah,
suburbs are becoming more and more desirable because you're not going downtown to work anymore.
you don't have to.
Right? Nobody has to.
Mm-hmm.
So in that scenario, buying something during COVID when the interest rate is 2%, it's insane. So you buy a suburban house for, probably 30 to 50% less for the same house, but it's close to the city or
Right.
close. So
Right.
that would be like my preferred market would be somewhere close to the city. And for me, I've decided myself that I wouldn't want to invest in anything that's too far away from where I currently live so that I could be there to solve a problem.
Yeah, yeah, that's generally how most people feel. I mean, I'm in line with that as well. I think it definitely takes a little bit more of an advanced or a more aggressive or risk-taking type of person to want
Yeah.
to do something that's like out of state, right?
Or you have a property manager, so you pay the price.
Yeah, and you might even have a property manager even if it's right next door, but it's definitely tends to be more comforting if you're closer.
Hmm.
Um, at least in my mind, and I think a lot of people are in line with that.
On my street, a friend of mine bought a duplex, and the rent that she was paying was so cheap, she just never moved in and just rented it out immediately. And
Perfect.
then the house next door went for sale, and she bought that one. So she lives literally next door to her house.
That's awesome.
I know, it's super great. Buying a duplex is a pro move.
It's a pro move because you can, like we already talked about, rent out one side, live in the other side, and that rent will offset your living expenses, and now you're
Yeah,
living
right.
free. But get creative, because you can do that even if you don't live in a duplex, right? If you got a basement or
Yep.
you got an extra room, or convert the garage if you got a garage or whatever.
Yeah. It's definitely cheaper to pay a contractor to build a room or build a door than it is to buy a house.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're really on it, and you don't have to own a house yet, but it's actually better if you don't own a house yet, because you can look for a house that has these qualities, right? You
Yep.
can look for a house that has the potential to be rented out in like partially, so.
Yeah, I'm having this conversation with my brother right now because he's living at home. He's working, he's in school, he's making a decent amount of money to just put it away and save it.
Yeah,
And he's in the position where when you're single, it's definitely easier to do because your requirements or your standards for living are lower, usually.
if you're a man, there's zero. You have no standard of living.
Yeah, right. So like if it were up to me, I have a 3-story house. I'd live in the 3rd floor. I'd get a small bathroom put in there, and maybe like some access to water for like a little Keurig or something. And I'd mostly spend all my time in my bedroom, and I have 3 other bedrooms, and people would just rent them and live in them,
Yeah,
and they would pay my rent or my mortgage and just kind of go through it. But when you live with someone else, you kind of want and value that privacy.
for sure. Yes, 100%.
But it's smart to live at home for a little bit, I think, because you can really put money away and you don't have to put 20% down on a place.
No,
That's not a thing.
no, that's not. I mean, I don't know if it's even worth it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You can debate it. Everybody's situation is going to be different, but most loans you can get for like 5% or 3%.
Yeah,
Even.
mine was 3.5%. Now that does increase my mortgage by something between $100 and $300. I don't know what the specifics are.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was saying, it's going to be different for people. Like some people, it might be worth it to save on that monthly payment, especially if they already have a ton of money, right? Then it doesn't.
Or enough to make the 20% down payment.
Right, but I'm thinking like, even if I have, let's say I have enough for the 20% down payment, but then once I put that down, I will have next to no money in the bank account.
Yep.
Not worth it for me. I'd rather have money in the bank. So I
Yeah.
would put down less money.
And I would argue that you could take that same amount of money and go 2 to 3 properties at 3.5% instead of one. And then while you're not making, again, you're not trying to make money, you're earning equity by having someone else pay the mortgage in those places.
Well, it gets tricky with loans, right? So banks aren't going to give you a fair, like a regular old mortgage for 3% on a home that you're not going to live in.
The primary residence. Yep.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. So typically in those scenarios, you will need closer to 20%. If you're trying to get like a loan for a property that is not going to, you're not living in that property, most places are going to say like 20%. Hard money lenders, and they're going to charge a steep interest rate is what I was going to say. Like
Right.
20% down and then like an 8 or 12% interest.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, yeah, that's going to be tough. That's where you do need the down payment. But that's why it helps to get a duplex or have part of your house rented out, like we were saying, because then you can get that great loan with,
Yeah, that low mortgage percentage.
yeah, with low money down, low interest rates. And so that you're going to do it anyways, because you're going to buy the house anyways for yourself. So you might as well like get something out of it. And then that snowballs to where you can save up to buy that next one with 20% down.
Yeah, I'm curious about borrowing against an appreciated property value as well. That's something I'm curious about, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have like traditional banks probably aren't going to help you out a whole lot when it comes to just buying a rental property.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, potentially, but a lot of people look to banks that are specifically like in that game. They call them like hard money lenders. And there's another term as well. I can't remember, but they like work. That's their game, is lending out money to people who are doing rentals. And again, it's higher down, higher interest rates, typically a quicker turnaround on the loan too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you know if banks are looking at if I own a home and I'm buying a new home from primary residence, does it look the same way, or is it because I have more than one mortgage?
So if you already own a home and you're trying to do this,
Yeah, so I own a home now, and
yeah.
I'll live in it for the primary residence time so that if I were to sell it, I'd avoid capital gains, which in PA is like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But now I want to buy a new house, and I'm going to move, and I want to leave my house, but keep owning it and rent it out to somebody else. I
Will they
imagine
give you like a regular mortgage for that new house? Is
they
your
would.
yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So then I could just increase the number of mortgages on a slower rate after I've proven that I have consistently set up or made payments on these kinds of things.
Yeah, because basically the contract for that mortgage is that you are intending and living there for at least 2 years. Yeah.
And that's a slower way to do it too. Moving sucks, but if you live in it for a few years, you kind of work out the kinks, you put in some sweat equity, and then you save some money, you do the work, some of the work yourself, you get a feel for the property and what works and what doesn't, and then you can always sell it and buy a different one, or you can hold it and buy a different one. Same idea.
Yeah, I think ideally you hold it and you buy a new one, but you have to be saving up money for that next down payment in the meantime, which could be tough for people, right? It could be tough for people just to get by on their mortgage, let alone saving up for another. But if you have it all in your mind as you're going through it and you're planning on it, I think you can get it done.
Yep. One of my dreams would be to own a little mini village, a little mini home village, because I want a tiny house.
Nice. I do not want a tiny house.
I want a tiny house, and I want in the center to be a gathering place. There's a gym. There's like a this and that supply store, and there's a grocery store, and then all the people that I like live there, and then we can all just hang out and be friends forever.
Sounds like a plan. And then we can be healthy, but also get a little fat too.
Listen, there's something to be said for eating pizza and ice cream.
Absolutely.
You have anything else to add on financial freedom in the perspective of real estate?
I don't. I mean, look, if this is a topic that interests you, I would suggest go doing some online research, Googling around, YouTube, those books that we mentioned, Rich Dad, Poor Dad's a great one.
Definitely don't join any of these. You have to buy into it, and now you're on the list, you're in the group where they're like, we need $5,000 of your money, and then we'll help you put your down payment. Those guys are sharks.
Yeah, don't do that. Save that.
Definitely don't do that.
But no, I think it's a journey that it's if you're into it, it's definitely you're going to learn a lot regardless. So
well, I love this topic, and I'm sure it'll come up again. If you guys have any questions, leave us a like, a subscribe, a share, and we will see you or live in your ears next time.
Perfect. Peace.